Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to welcome you all to Parasha Noach. So today we're going to study the flood. This is a nice post-flood looking shirt that I've got on, and I think we're going to have a really nice time with this. I'm in the process. I'm just about wrapping up with college, getting job offers from the local congressman. But you know what? We've got something more important to take care of right this minute, and that is our pre-Sabbath Torah portion. So today we're going from Genesis 6:9 to 11:32, and we've got our Haftarah and our New Testament text to go along with that. So I'm going to read here from the English Standard Version. Not like it's my favorite or anything, but it'll work. So it says, "These are the generations of Noach," in verse 9. Noach was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noach walked with Elohim, and Noach had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in Elohim's sight, and the earth was filled with violence, or Hamas. Today we know Hamas as a violent militant group in the modern political state of Israel, but Hamas is also a word used to describe violence in the Genesis account. And Elohim saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. As we saw last time, we had regular flesh, people who were mixing in with each other, and half human, half angelic being hybrid flesh. So all flesh was being corrupted. And it says, "Behold, I will destroy them with the earth." Not from the earth, but with the earth. We have a lot of scientists that talk about, some of these rocks and, all this rock formation that occurred could have only happened over millions of years. But Noah's flood offers a unique opportunity for Yahweh to completely reshape the way that the earth looks like. In verse 14, it says, "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth, 50 cubits, and its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark on its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. And all flesh with the breath of life would be humans." So he's going to destroy all humans, but we see later on that it's going to be a faithful few who will survive. "But I will establish everything that is on the earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark." So Yahweh at this point already has, a Torah, a righteousness to follow, and evil is departing from that. "And every living thing of all flesh," says. So he's gonna bring you, your wife, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And then it says, "And of everything, living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come in to you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve you as food for you and for them." Noach did this, and he did all that Elohim commanded him. Then in chapter 7, what's up, comment section? Hello, Mitch, brother Mitch. It says, "Then Yahweh said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth." So we already have a differentiation prior to Leviticus of clean and unclean. No, Noah knew this. Guys, Noah wasn't fleshing out pigskins and eating chicharrones or, frying some bacon. No, 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 no. You got me all wrong if that's what you think about this scripture here. Now, it says, and after 7 days, the water of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. Because it says, as above, so below. Yahweh says he's going to gather the waters above and he's going to gather the waters under the earth. So here are the waters shooting up. So Hebrew cosmology coming into play here. And the windows of the heavens were open. So the water comes from both above and below. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And on that same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to all its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as Elohim had commanded him, and Yahweh shut him in. So Yahweh locked up the boat. And it says, the flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land, in whose nostrils was the breath of life filled. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heaven. So we see that humans were given the breath of life in Genesis, and then here we see that all animals also had some breath of life. That would be something interesting to look into later on down the line. It says they were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him on the ark, or in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. But Elohim remembered Noah, and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And Elohim made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the water had abated, and in the 7th month, on the 7th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until all the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot. She returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. So that's like essentially saying, okay, it's safe now. You can come out. The dove coming back was an indication that there was still too much action going on down there on the ground for everybody to come out. In the 601st year, in the 1st month, the first day of the month. So Rosh Hashanah, ironically, right? So what do we know about Rosh Hashanah, right? Yahweh, we have the first day of every year. It's a new beginning. Literally, Yahweh has cycles in scripture, and the purpose is a new beginning. And literally in Genesis, we see that Rosh Hashanah is the day that the waters were dried off from the earth, that Noach removed the covering of the ark, and then he beheld that the ground was dry. So Yahweh is like starting over on the first day of the year. Then it says, in the second month, on the 22nd day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then Elohim said to Noach, go out from the ark, you and your wife, your sons and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So we see another commandment, once again, to be fruitful and multiply. So Yahweh wants to replenish the earth. So he starts that process on Rosh Hashanah. Then in the second month, he gets to the second phase. It says, every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird that moves on the earth, or everything that moves on the earth, went out by families from the ark. So they all went out. It's like the animals knew that they belonged together. And by families, we would talk about species, kinds, and then even down to, the minutia of individual animal families. So there was an organized process here. Then it says, then Noach built an altar to Yahweh and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. It's interesting because when we get to Leviticus later, which some pastors and preachers are on now, Yahweh doesn't accept unclean animals as an offering. He doesn't. He never has, never will. He only accepts the clean ones. So here's Noach acting as a priest and essentially taking animals and offering them to Yahweh. So Noah has a priestly role before we even see the Levitical priesthood come into being formally. And that's probably because he was operating under a different kind of priesthood. Again, that would probably make for another video. And then Yahweh smelled the pleasing aroma. So Yahweh likes the animals, all right? Yahweh doesn't want you taking lettuce and tomatoes and burning lettuce and tomatoes. He wants the animals or fruit. He doesn't want you offering fruit. Like if you're going to do like something on an altar like that, who tried it, right? It was Cain and Abel. So Cain actually tried it and it didn't work out very well. Now we'll see that he wants first fruits of the crops. That's later on. There's a different process for that. So he said in his heart, Yahweh, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. We have these philosophical conversations about, are people born evil? This is not Yahweh saying that the moment that we are conceived and born that we are inherently evil. But it seems like people have something. They have something, and I don't know how to exactly explain it, but they have this evil nature to which they succumb to, and then they start practicing evil from the time that they're young. And we see this happening still today. It says, neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, 2 seasons, summer and winter. Yahweh's calendar is summer and winter. Day and night shall not cease. It is dichotomous. Then in chapter 9, it says, and Elohim blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Again, so once again to animals, once again to humans. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, excuse me, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. So he's reminding Noah that humans have dominion. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Okay, so Yahweh said in Genesis, everything that grows from the ground shall be food for you. Now he's saying every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. So now we've got moving targets. People love to go hunting. and that's a good thing. There are so-called Jewish prohibitions on hunting. We just don't see that in the canon of scriptures, wherein Yahweh says in Genesis 9:3 that every animal is now a moving target in which you can hunt. He says, and as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. So he's expanding what we can eat. So Yahweh loves the meat of the animals. He's also giving us the meat of the animals. So Yahweh loves the aroma of the clean animals. He's giving us permission to eat those animals. It says, but you shall not eat flesh with its life. So here's the first hint at what it says in Leviticus. That is its blood. So there are more significant punishments that we're going to see later, like the Kereth punishment, where you're actually cut off from your people. In verse 5, it says, and for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man, from his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For Elohim made man in his image. So in later on in the Torah, we see that Yahweh says eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc., etc. This is the first hint that we have in Torah about Yahweh's attitude of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Essentially, he's saying if you do harm to other people, you are going to be harmed. And there's this perverted form of it called karma. Well, whatever you do to other people, you're going to get back to you. Of course, this punishment is not inflicted by Yahweh, but it is inflicted by the gods of that religion. And so we need to be very careful when subscribing to those other things, because there's always a new age or a newer religion remake of what's already in the scriptures. And he says in verse 7, and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. Then Elohim said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And Elohim said, this is a sign of the covenant that I make between you, me and you, and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign, the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between you, me and you, and every living creature of all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. It's interesting because Elohim uses first person pronouns and third person pronouns to talk about himself. And so this is kind of a case where Elohim is demonstrating a plurality. Not just this, but just every time where he's interchangeably talking about himself in first and third person pronouns. It says that Elohim said to Noach, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and you and all flesh that is on the earth. And there's unfortunately, there's a group of people that have taken this sign and made it theirs, but really it's Yahweh's, and it belongs to him, and it belongs to him and humanity. So it's for him and it's for humanity. It's not for humanity to be engaging in perversions, gender changes in sexuality preferences. This was meant strictly as a sign to say, look, I am not sending any more waters upon the earth. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan or Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these people of the whole earth were dispersed. Meaning people they spread out. says Noach began to be a man of the soil. Okay, so he's going back to the original intentions for Ha'adam, which was to work the ground. And he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine of that vineyard and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness, which is good. It means that Ham was the only one to uncover his father's nakedness, which is described explicitly later in Leviticus, where there is a prohibition put on it. And obviously this prohibition existed even up until this point because we see the shame that's associated with doing such a thing. When Noach awoke from his wine and knew that what his youngest son had done to him, he said, because obviously you're not supposed to be, you weren't supposed to be naked with your family members able to see that, even your relatives. That's what it says in the scriptures. Cursed be Canaan or Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. So Ham was cursed. Why did I say Ham? Ham. So Ham was cursed. Don't eat ham. Ham is very unclean. Don't eat that. Ham was cursed, and there are certain sects of Judaism that subscribe to this idea of B'nai Noach slavery, which is this idea that it's actually theology that extends to the point that people who are identified as descendants of Ham are inherently subject to a life of slavery and servitude, essentially. And they have their own doctrine behind all that, and that's just not exactly what it's saying here. And this is, again, another branch off from this Parasha teaching that I definitely have to do another whole video on. But just know that if you've heard of B'nai Noach slavery, you could easily Wikipedia it. It's not really a biblical term. There are just maybe a couple scriptures that they'll take out of context to justify that theology. And in verse 26, it says, he also said, blessed be Yahweh, the Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan or Canaan be his servant. So essentially, B'nai Noach slavery is people who self-identify as Jews, making people who they look at as Hamites to be their slaves. So that's what that is. And it says, may Elohim enlarge Japheth, okay, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem. So essentially, let Yahweh allow Japheth to be in Shem's territory, and let Canaan be his servant. What do we see? We see this unfolding in prophecy today. Like, for example, there are sects in Judaism in which, okay, so for example, you had the Balfour Declaration back in World War I. The Balfour Declaration was very clear. Okay, let's get a deal with England going. Let's have a Zionist state in the modern day place that we now call Israel. It's called Israel biblically. This land is called Israel a few times in the Bible, actually, including Matthew, and there are a few other places in the Tanakh. But the modern day political state, we see this idea where there are people coming from different European countries who self-identify, of course, as Ashkenazi Jews, and they're going to this spot. And then, of course, in 1948, we see the establishment of this place. And so the tent of Shem would essentially be the land of Israel. And so we see people who are non-Shemites dwelling in the land of Israel. As we're going to see later on, you're going to see what it takes to, at least in Yahweh's eyes, be a Shemite. Now, there was priority in terms of the blood relation to Shem for a while, in terms of, not a lot of people from outside nations were actually participating in the whole Torah walk up until the point of Exodus. And so there's that. But what matters most is that to be identified as a faithful Hebrew, all you have, or Israelite, all you have to do is believe in the Messiah and to walk in the Torah. So essentially, Japheth is dwelling in the land that Yahweh has given people who are faithful to him. And we're going to see more of that later on as we read. Yes, there are blood descendants in the scriptures, in the Tanakh, but at this point today, what Yahweh is relying on is a faithful response to his calling. So what we have here, I actually want to show this page. Might get a bit controversial, but we're going to see, yes, in a historical and genealogical context, Ashkenazi Jews are often linked to Japhethites. The term Ashkenazi derives from Ashkenaz, a biblical figure in the Table of Nations in Genesis, who is the first son of Gomer. And we're going to see this in just a little bit, who is in turn the son of Japheth, a son of Noach. So essentially, the order they want it in is essentially what we have in the modern day is essentially a fulfillment of this prophecy. We might have people who are faithful to the Torah, people who are Jews who keep the Torah faithfully, just people who, walk out their Tanakh and keep the Sabbath and whatnot. But we also have people self-identifying as Shem who are not doing the requirements of the scriptures. And this is the way that they want it. So essentially, they want the Goyim, the outside nations, to serve them. Some of these, some of these sects. I mean, obviously, just like every religion, like with Islam, with different groups of religions, there are the more radical sects and there are the more neutral kind of like moderate sects. Like they're not crazy zealous about their religion. They're okay with accepting a bit of syncretism. But there are many that are not. So we essentially see a case where there are many self-identifying as such. They want the outside nations to be their servants, and then they want to dwell in the tents of essentially other people. Or in this case, right, Yahweh's land is being taken up by people who are, in some cases, participating in pride parades, who are genociding members of other nations, who are engaging in very Western, democratic, anti-Yahweh's word behavior. And so, again, I just said they're going to cancel me for this because Genesis 9 is very clear about what's going on today. And it says, after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Then it says, these are the generations of the sons of Noah. Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth. So right away we see Gomer, chapter 10. Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Ripha. And by the way, let me just make this very clear. We're very pro Torah. We're very pro Jew. We're very pro Yahweh's people. And so this isn't meant to be some sort of this is not meant to be at all in any way anti-Semitic or racist or targeted at any person. This is just me trying to say and actually consider some of the different viewpoints that people have just on chapters 9 and 10. So, and then it says the son of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland peoples spread their lands, each with his own language, by their clans, in their nations. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt. So Egypt comes from Ham. Put, and Canaan, or Canaan. So it's interesting. Canaan, or Canaan, was taken from Ham by Shem and given to Japheth. That's what we see all throughout history. I may have to do a historical study on this verse here, or on these sets of verses, because different people groups have lived in that land that we now call Israel up until this point, like radically different people groups though. So it says the sons of Ramah, Sheba and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on the earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Yahweh. And I think this verse implies that Yahweh, our creator, had some form of respect for Nimrod and his, essentially, you might say, masculinity, his hunting skills, his alpha apex sort of attitude towards things. And it says in verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Achad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Resen. Between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, Kasluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorim. So the Philistines come from Nimrod. So our topic for those tuning in to TikTok, we're reading the Parasha about Noah's flood, but then we're also extending beyond that and talking about the implications of the post-flood events. So in verse 15, we see Canaan or Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Sinites. And it's interesting because these are the people groups that Israel has to go up against in order to get their land that Yahweh is giving them as an inheritance for their obedience. It says, afterwards, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed, right? So they went to different parts of Canaan. And the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, and the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. It says, to Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth. Children were born. Excuse me. The sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arpaxad, Lud, and Aram. And the sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arpaxad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg. For in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Almodad, Shelef, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadaram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abemiel, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. The territory in which they lived extended from Misha in the direction of Sephir to the hill county of the east, or country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. So the lineage of Abraham ultimately came from Shem, but before Abraham, there are lots of Shemites that would extend, obviously, then their descendant, they would extend their descendants in terms of they would be part of the nations. They would still be part of the nations because they wouldn't be starting in the covenant with Yahweh. But then maybe we see some of these lines coming back in the earlier parts of Exodus, where we see this mixed multitude coming up to worship Yahweh. And it says, these are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies, in their nations, and from these nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. Now it says the Tower of Babel. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. Scholars debate over what this is. Is it Hebrew? Was there a language before Hebrew? We just don't know. The scripture never says. And it says, and as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and build them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the whole face of the earth. So let's do this for honor. Let's do this for glory. Let's do this for fame. Let's just do this activity. We don't want to be spread away from each other. And it's interesting because this is a conspiracy to rebel against the Father, or to rebel against Yahweh in general. But the scripture never says that Nimrod commissioned these people to do this. This is something that gets assumed by people who might read scripture minimally, or people that are outside of the faith. We just don't see much involvement, or at least a direct account of Nimrod's involvement, although it may be implied he may have had influence over this event. We just don't know for sure. And it says, and Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. Now, came down, we don't know. I mean, honestly, how far did he come down? That'd be good. Because if he came down to the ground, just observe this, right? We have a potential manifestation. If he just came down a little bit, maybe we don't have that. But in some way he came down. And so it says, and Yahweh said, behold, they are one people. So they're like united. There's almost a sense of, this is the perfect, essentially, formula for nationalism, right? You have one people with one culture, with one language, and with one goal. And that's what many nations look for, to be strong and to be proud. And it says, and they all have one language. This is only the beginning of what they will do, right? Because any nation that has these things, it's really only the beginning of what they'll do. They start on a project, they'll do well. They'll do more. Maybe they'll build a massive economy. Maybe they'll conquer other nations. It says, come, let us, again, affirming a plurality to Yahweh, come, let us go down and there confuse their language. So we might have had the Father and the Almighty Son both coming down together to work to confuse the languages, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. So they were building a city. They were going to have a nation of their own. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there Yahweh confused all the language of all the earth. And from there, Yahweh had dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So it doesn't say necessarily. So Yahweh there in that moment, he took that one language and he divided it up. They couldn't communicate with each other anymore, and therefore they could not continue building. So in verse 10, we see, these are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad, 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years and had other sons and daughters. Then Arpachshad had lived 35 years. He fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. And Shelah lived 30 years. He fathered Eber. And Shelah lived after and fathered Eber 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. And Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. And Reu lived after he fathered Serug 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. When Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. I repeated a verse. Excuse me for the redundancy. And Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. Terah is Abraham's father, we're going to see. And Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Avram. Nahor, and Haran. And here's what it says about Avram. Now these are the generations of Terah. And we're going to learn about Terah a little bit here. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father, Terah, in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren and she had no child. And it says, verse 31, Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Now, what's interesting is the Hebrew word for terah means to stop or to lag. It literally means to stop, like as if one hits a dead end. And so what we see here is that Terah has an initial conviction to go to Canaan. We don't know where this conviction came from, but in the Acts account, there's a hint about the conviction, at least when Stephen is talking about the story before he gets stoned, the story of his people. Now, what's interesting is that Abraham received the same calling to go from Ur of the Chaldeans to the land of Canaan. But it looks like Terah, when he went to the land, or was on his way to the land of Canaan, he stopped halfway there and ultimately did not fulfill that calling, showing us in the scriptures that many are called, but few are chosen. So Abraham was the one who would carry forth that mission ultimately to settle in Canaan. And I don't want anybody to go to like artificial, extra biblical texts or consult with different sources in their theorizing and hypothesizing about what actually happened here. But it's interesting because Terah actually lived 205 years and then died in Haran. So it looked like he had a mission of some sort. We don't know if Yahweh commissioned him, but based on the patterns, it's likely that this was the case. And he ended up stopping. He didn't finish the journey. This would be the torch for his son to carry forward. So we'll get to that next week in our next parasha. In the meantime, I'd like to go to our Haftarah portion because our Haftarah portion is going to be very important. We saw earlier in Genesis 9 that essentially the land has been transferred from several different groups of people. First, the Hamites possessed the land. Then the Shemites were given the land. And then in our modern day history, we're seeing a lot of Japhethites and mixed group peoples, and then also people who are faithfully observing the Torah that might be part of Jewish sects, but all three essentially are inhabiting the land. And not all are Shemites in the sense that they believe in the Messiah and actually want to carry out the entire scriptures. But what we will see in prophecy, right, is that the land is going to be given back to Yahweh and to Yahweh's people. Daniel 9 was very clear, Daniel 7 was very clear that the Messiah would defeat a lawless one that is coming in the future, and that the land would be given as part of his kingdom to his people, and they would possess it and rule with an iron rod, essentially, and possess agency over it and perform his function, which is to essentially, have rules and regulations in place and to enforce them. So the people would be the enforcement mechanism of the kingdom. And so the land will be given back to Shem because there are all kinds of faithful people that are coming back to walking in Torah, and they are part of the nation of Israel. And so essentially we have this prophecy, but ultimately the land is going to return to its rightful owner, Yahweh, but he's going to give his people agency to live there and to exercise rulership over it, according to Daniel chapter 7. Now, let's go to Zechariah, because Zechariah gives us more detail about these events that happen in the land when Yahweh's people come back and they return there and they start worshiping there again. So please go with me to Zechariah chapter 2, verse 14. Zechariah 2:14. We're going to go to Zechariah 2:14 and then read to chapter 4 and verse 7. So let's open up our scriptures. And these are events about Joshua the high priest. So a different Joshua from the Joshua in the book of Joshua. Just be wary of that. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. And Yahweh said to Satan, so this angel of the Lord that we see in Zechariah is a messenger, but is also a manifestation of Yahweh. It is Yahweh come down in essentially he is coming down in a less glorified state than he would if it were just the Father purely in all his unmediated glory on the throne. So he says, Yahweh rebuke you, O Satan, or O adversary. Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire? Now Joshua, or Yehoshua, was standing before the angel, or in this case, Yahweh, clothed with filthy garments. And the angel said to those who were standing before him, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments. So people say, oh, this is an angel cleansing Yehoshua from all of his sin. No, this angel is a manifestation of Yahweh, and therefore has the power to forgive Yehoshua of his sin. And it says, and I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. Essentially, Yehoshua the priest needs a turban because this is a requirement in the book of Exodus. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him with garments. And the angel of Yahweh was standing by. And the angel of Yahweh solemnly assured Yehoshua, thus says Yahweh Sabaoth, or the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways and keep my charge, then you shall rule my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you the right of access among those who are standing here. Hear now, O Yehoshua, the priest. So essentially, what is he saying? You will rule my temple and you will have charge of my courts. So Yahweh is offering him both a priestly and judgeship role, a member on the council, essentially. For behold, on the stone that I have set before Joshua, on a single stone with 7 eyes, I will engrave its inscription, declares Yahweh. Oh, hold on. So here now, O Yehoshua the high priest, you and your friends who sit before you, for they are men who are a sign. Behold, I will bring my servant the branch. This is messianic. And it says, I will engrave its inscription, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of this land in a single day. And Yahweh, when he says he's going to remove the iniquity of the land in a single day, he's referring to the death of the manifestation. And it says, in that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to come under his vine and under his fig tree. There will be so much peace that everybody will be essentially looking to fellowship with each other. So Shem, the faithful followers of Yahweh, ultimately in prophecy, Yahweh has a seed, and his seed, according to Shaul in the book of Galatians, are those who choose to follow him, and we'll have to do more of a series on the Pauline epistles. They will be given the land, they'll be given the rights, they'll be given the access, and they will be given the peace that comes with dwelling with Yahweh in the land. And then it says in chapter 4, and the angel who talked with me came again and woke me like a man who is awakened out of his sleep. And he said to me, what do you see? I said, I see and behold a lampstand all of gold with a bowl on the top of it and 7 lamps on it with 7 lips on each of the lamps that are on top of it. And there are 2 olive trees by it, one on the right of the bowl and the other on its left. Then I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these, my Lord? what are these, my master? Or what are, or it could be in a sense, what are these, my sir? I'd have to look into that. Then it says, then the angel who talked with me answered and said to me, do you not know what these are? I said, no, my Lord. Then he said to me, this is the word of Yahweh to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says Yahweh of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel you shall become a plain, and he shall bring forward the top stone amidst shouts of grace, grace to it. So let me do a Google search for us here, because this is important. Zerubbabel, here we go. Let's just get some, I just want to get some, let's just get some context for this. So we see, according to Wikipedia, according to the Hebrew Bible, was a governor of the Achaemenid Empire, province of Yehud, the grandson of Jeconiah, penultimate king of Judah. So he's a Canaan person, essentially. Just means seed of Babylon. So this is prophetic. And so we have a prophecy about the Messiah. We also have a prophecy about this conquering governor of Babylon coming in hot and essentially taking everything away. And he says he's going to make it a plain. So it's interesting because mountains are also symbolic of governments in the scriptures. So it says that you shall become a plain. Essentially, you won't have any, there will be no authority. Your authority will essentially be gone. All of it will be gone. It will disappear. And it's interesting because I almost wonder if there are messianic implications even for verses 5 through 7. Like, as I do these studies, I learn more. And this is another thing that I'd want to look into more about the dual fulfillment implication. Because there are a lot of dual fulfillment implications that I've learned through scriptures, but there are some that could use some refinement. But let's go speaking of dual fulfillment and speaking of the Messiah, we have a very important portion in the Brit Hadashah that I would love to read. And it's based off essentially what the deal is with Noah's flood, and ultimately what the deal is with Elohim's kingdom and bringing back justice, bringing his faithful followers back to the land like he wanted to see to begin with. And essentially clearing out the evilness as well as the evil people who dwell in the land, who are doing perversions, falsehoods, disobeying Yah. So let's go ahead and go to Luke chapter 17, verses 20 through 17. Let's go to Luke chapter 17, verses 20 through 27. Here it says, Yeshua replied, once on being asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of Elohim would come, Yeshua replied, the coming of the kingdom of Elohim is not something that can be observed. Nor will people say, here it is, or there it is, because the kingdom of Elohim is in your midst. Then he said to his disciples, the time is coming when you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, but you will not see it. People will tell you, there he is, or here he is. Do not go running off after them. For the Son of Man in his day will be like lightning, which flashes and lights up from the sky, from one end to the other. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. Just as in the days of Noach or Noah, so also will it be in the days of the Son of Man. So sudden, and unexpected. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage up to the day that Noach entered the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed them all. So up until the coming of Yeshua, people will be living their lives as normal. Yes, even during the so-called Great Tribulation period, many people will be living and conducting their lives as normal until the very day that they see him return. And no, this is not a pre-trib rapture reference. We don't want that theology to cloud our thinking. And I say this because I was at a chapel this morning, and a young man was preaching, and he incorporated in his preaching some little thing about his dream on the pre-tribulation rapture. So we have to be very careful. During Noah's time, the times were already perilous before the flood came. Things weren't comfy cushy like they are in the first world. Yahweh says there was violence in the earth. So before the Son of Man comes back, there's going to be violence in the earth, but on the flip side, people are still going to be living their lives, even though there's a lot of chaos happening around them. So there's going to be a lot of chaos, but it's going to be just enough to where people can continue living their lives, neglecting the word of Elohim, ultimately until the Son of Man comes, and they're all taken away by his presence. They're all taken away, just, they're dead. They're dead, maybe some of them even upon seeing him. And he's going to take it all for himself. He's going to fight. I think I may have had one other comment, but I didn't remember what it was. So I think we're done here. I think this makes for our second Parasha study. Definitely need to go through Zechariah 4 more. Definitely need to go through the next Torah portion for next week and get prepared. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Those of you guys that stuck around this entire time, or even if you watched just a little bit, I appreciate that very much. And I wish everybody a happy Sabbath. Take care.